welcome back to my channel. In today's video I am making a interactive card, which is a little different. We'll be using a die from Lawn Fawn today. We have a family member that is having a 100th birthday, and so I was asked to make a card for her. So this is the card I chose to make. So first things first, I did a lot of die cutting off screen. Here I have a SIzzix and Tim Holtz die. This is 665437. What's cool is that not only does it cut out the letter or number. First off, I love that it has numbers, but it also cuts out like an outline. And so you have lots of options. You can layer like the outline together. You can layer, you can just use the outline by itself, or you can just use the letter. And I think that's really cool. I really don't have a die set that has numbers with it. I have a few alphabet dies, but none that have numbers. So that was another appeasing thing about that particular die set. Lots of versatility, good size for cards, and had numbers. So the star of the show today is this die set from Lawn Fawn. This is the Lawn Fawn Pop-up Platform card. This has been out for a while, but I don't make a whole lot of interactive cards. So, but when I was asked to make a card, this is the first thing that popped up in my head. So, no pun intended. So first off, I went through and I cut out that plaid patterned paper from a foiled floral Paper Studio paper pad. Then I took some Paper Studio green cardstock and cut out these little T shapes. You need 3 of those. And then I cut out 3 of those little grass borders. That is not something that is critical to the function of this card, but is something that I wanted to use because I'm going to put a lot of florals in it, and I wanted it to look like there was grass and not just like some randomness. I wanted to make a little more sense, I guess you could say. So that big piece, Jennifer McGuire says it looks, that was cut out of the plaid paper. Jennifer McGuire says it looks like a head and shoulders. You need 2 of those. So the head and shoulders piece, the plaid, that and the little T pieces, those are all you need to do for the basic function of this pop-up platform. And like I said, I did a lot of die cutting off screen, just so I didn't absolutely bore you to death. So for my florals, I am going to do a lot of free range stamping. I am going to use Gina K Designs Amalgam ink. I'm going to do some very, very simple alcohol marker coloring using some Altenew markers today. I just have some scrap cardstock. This is proof that it is scrap cardstock. That was just an offcut of some swatching I was doing. For the flowers, I chose this Altenew stamp set. This is the Blooming Bouquet. The reason why I chose it is because it had coordinating dies, number 1, and number 2, it had these really small, kind of petite, almost like pansy looking type flowers. I don't know if that's what they are, but I just thought the size would be really good with the overall pop-up platform card. I have a lot of sketch markers from Altenew here. I show you a bunch that I don't end up using. I just didn't think they went very well with like my card design. They were a little too dark. I wanted something a little bit lighter. Here, if you want to just pause and see which ones I was going to use, you can. Which ones I did use was Sweet Leaf, Grassfield, Cotton Candy. I used Snapdragon, Sunray, and I guess that's all. I wanted a couple colors of green just for a little bit of variety. There's not a huge difference in those, but I just wanted a little bit of variety, so in the greens. So moving on to actually creating the pop-up platform, we can put those 3 little grassy borders off to the side for now. What we need to do in order to create this card is you need some double-sided tape. This is 1/4 inch double-sided tape. I believe this was actually gifted from a free gift with purchase from Scrapbook Pal. This tape is extra sticky. I thought the tape that I ordered off of Amazon was sticky. This is even more sticky. So I may be converting over to them because this was like ultra sticky and I loved it. So first things first, like I said, I cut that large head and shoulder piece out twice, and the die creates score lines for you. And all I'm going to do is go through and reinforce those score lines on both pieces. For the most part, you are going to do the exact same thing to both of the plaid pieces. They're going to be identical for the most part. So all I've done is fold those in on themselves so that the white sides touch one another. Okay. And you end up kind of having it to where it kind of curves in on itself. The other thing is the T pieces have a little score line in them, and you need to burnish that score line on 2 of those pieces. So once you've done that, those are fine. Those are good to go. This third one, we do something a little different with that one, but we will get to that later. So I have this one piece done. We're going to do the exact same thing. All we're going to do is reinforce those score lines that the die creates for us. Once that is done, we are now going to apply some of that 1/4 inch double-sided tape to these fold lines. You're going to treat both of these the same for now. So all I'm doing is just right below that score line on that little rectangular flap, I'm adding just a little bit of that double-sided tape. You could use 1/8 inch tape. You could use wet glue. I think that the best way to assemble these is to use just a really strong double-sided tape. You could use a really strong double-sided tape runner if you wanted to. Wet glue, yes, will give you some wiggle room, but these dies are really easy to put together. You really don't need wiggle room for error, if that makes sense. So all I've done to these plaid pieces is I have added double-sided tape to this small flap to the right and the small tab at the top. That's all you need. It's just those 2. And you treat both of them the same. Now we're going to start putting in those green tabs. So all I've done is I have flipped over the plaid piece to where the adhesive side or the plaid side is facing down, and I've inserted that little tab to where it was facing down also. There's a little notch in the top of that, and I have just stuck that inside, making sure it's tucked in all the way, and then I have removed the release paper on the back of the other one of that little tab, and all we're going to do is fold that tab down and then adhere it together. I did it wrong on this one, so we're going to correct it. So I have the adhesive side or the plaid side facing down, and I'm going to adhere this little tab. The adhesive is now facing down, and I'm going to insert it into that slot. I'm going to pull it in to where it's nice and tight and snug up against that, and I'm going to fold on that second score line. Okay, and then I'm going to lay that sticky side down, and that is adhered. That's all you have to do. That's it. Sorry, I know you can hear my toddler screaming in the background, so sorry. And that's all you have to do. You do that to both of these pieces. Now what we can do is we can remove the release paper off of that longer tab at the top, and you're just going to fold on that third score line. You're going to tuck that to where the adhesive side is now facing down, and you're going to adhere that down. We're going to repeat that on the other side, and this is what you should have when it's all done. Lawn Fawn has instructions on their website. I have saved Jennifer McGuire's instructions for this particular interactive card just because I felt like it was it's Jennifer McGuire. So, I mean, she's awesome. Anyway, so I've done the same thing. We've got that third score line. I've folded on that. I've tucked in that side that had the adhesive, the double-sided tape on it. I folded it down and we're going to stick it straight down. Lawn Fawn is very good about making sure that these are easy to put together. If you're very hesitant or unsure, do a practice run. Just use some cheap cardstock or some cardstock that you have a bunch of, or maybe cardstock you don't like, and do a practice run. So what you saw me do there is that third little T piece, it had that little flap on the end. We don't need that flap. What we do need to do is cut that flap off and then apply adhesive straight down the middle to one side of this T piece. This is where things are become different between the other ones. So you're going to take one of the plaid pieces here. You're going to adhere it down to where it lines up at the bottom of kind of that third score line. It lines up at the bottom and it's aligned with that top one left to right. So I'm making sure that it's aligned to each side and aligned at the bottom. It's not hanging over and it's not adhered woppy-jawed. And then I'm going to squish it down. And that's all you do with that one. Now you're going to apply adhesive, double-sided tape to this one. And you're going to put it on that larger rectangular piece right here, kind of between the second and the third score line that this creates. This is a spot where you could probably use wet glue and be just fine. But I already had that double-sided tape out. It was working for me, so I went with it. So you're going to remove your release paper, and then all you're going to do is make sure that these two head and shoulder pieces, I guess you could say, I was really struggling with this backing paper. I had just recently cut my nails, and so I was on the struggle bus. All you're going to do is make sure that they face one another now, and you're going to make sure that those line up. And that's it. Squish them together. That is good to go. The next step is to adhere these sides together. You've now adhered the bottom together. Now we need to adhere the sides. So remove your release paper and you're just going to line up those scallops. This lines up really easy. Again, Lawn Fawn is really good about making sure that this is pretty foolproof. And once you've made one of these, or once you've watched a tutorial, it's pretty easy. It really is. See how it completes that scalloped border? Perfect. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. Remove our release paper and fold that to where it completes the scallop. And then this is done. The whole interactive element is complete. And now you can move on to some fun parts. So all you do is you push up from the bottom and it pops in place and stays. I don't know who creates a lot of Lawn Fawns interactive dies, but they are super brilliant because this is so easy. And it looks like you spent hours and hours, and we're only 13 minutes in. And I jibber-jabbered at the beginning and showed you stuff. So this is where those, I chose to add those green grass borders. You don't have to. There's a hill that comes in the die. You could just use these T pieces as they are. I did both where I added glue to the actual grass border and stuck it in. And then I did it to where I applied glue to the T piece and stuck the grass border to it. It doesn't matter, whichever one you prefer. But I just wanted there to be some different elements to it, I guess. So, or some different texture. One of the things that you could do, being mindful that this still has to fit in an envelope, is you could, if you want extra height, you could cut these borders to where they are different heights. and then you would get some different elevation. Right now, they're all adhered at the same height, which was not a problem for me. But if you wanted to have some more versatility, you could definitely glue these to where they were both, they were tiered, I guess you could say. So one of the best things that I found to make sure these things adhere was just to fold it all flat and put my hand on it. So I have some Graffix Acetate. I purchased this acetate in 12 by 12 sheets off of Amazon. It's a good heavyweight acetate, and I'm taking 1/8 inch score tape, and I'm going to apply some acetate, or excuse me, some double-sided tape to these, for lack of better words, like acetate picks. So all I've done is cut a thin sliver of this acetate, and I'm going to apply some of that 1/8 inch score tape to one end of it, and I'm going to stick these numbers on there. These numbers are some brushed foil cardstock from Paper Studio, and I used that Tim Holtz die to cut them out. And I just used the number. I didn't use the outline and the number, just the number. For these zeros, I put some double-sided tape on the top and the bottom of the number. And so the acetate is going to be seen through the center of the O of the 0, but that doesn't bother me. It's acetate, so it's clear, so it's pretty hard to see. But this also gives it just a little bit more contact with the adhesive, and it also helps to give it a little more stability and strength. For that number 1, I put that acetate up pretty high on that number 1, again, just because I wanted to make sure that this doesn't like fall apart. So I'm going to adhere these zeros the same way to these acetate picks, and then we can start placing them inside the card. I applied more of that 1/8 inch score tape to the front of these acetate picks, and then I'm just going to place them inside the card. I do end up going back, and I think the 0 on the right, I ended up trimming that down just so that it didn't, there was just a little bit more movement to these numbers. But for the most part, you just stick them on there and see whatever kind of orientation appeals the most to you. But I did end up going back and kind of trimming some of that acetate off. I just felt like that looked a little bit better. I closed the card just to make sure that there wasn't any adhesive still sticking out that would kind of keep the pop-up platform from popping open like it's supposed to. But that's the start of it. There is an add-on to this particular die set. I don't have it, but it kind of puts like a background or like a stage background behind it. And that's something that you can purchase as an add-on. So I'm going to go ahead and free range stamp all of those florals that I chose. I chose 2 of like the swags, the single flower, and then 2 of the smaller leaves. And I'm going to use this Gina K amalgam ink to stamp these out. I'm going to stamp out way more than I think I'm going to need. The reason for that is because sometimes you try a color, it doesn't look right, or you don't stamp something right, or you go to die cut it and you die cut it wrong. You know, stuff happens. So I went through and just, like a mad woman, stamped a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to let those dry. That ink does take a little bit longer to dry, and so I'm going to let it dry. It occurred to me that I had nothing on here, no like sentiment per se, other than that 100. So in that die set, that pop-up platform die set, there was this little square, or excuse me, rectangle, and it was right here. And that is going to house my sentiment. So I'm just going to cut that out of some scrap white cardstock using my little SIzzix sidekick here. And I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to stamp my sentiment on top of that. My sentiment comes from this Momenta stamp and die combo. It's 28954 is the number for it. They don't name theirs, which is weird to me, but that's the number of it, if in case you're looking for it. I purchased this at Hobby Lobby not too long ago. It's probably been several months, but I think I purchased it on clearance. I had some Altenew cotton candy ink, which matches one of the ink colors of markers I used. And I just stamped the back of that little die just to make sure I liked the placement, make sure I liked the color, all that jazz. And then I flipped it over and I'm going to stamp it for real. And I'm going to stamp it 2 or 3 times just so that I can get a nice, clean, crisp impression. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to adhere it flat onto this card onto this platform base with just some liquid glue. I'm going to fold that flat, just kind of push it down, apply some liquid glue to the back, and adhere it straight down flat to that middle section. Once that's all done, we are going to move on to the coloring. So, like I said, I had a whole bunch of these sketch markers here. I ended up not using several of them. I didn't use either of the purples and I didn't use the red. Like I said, I just felt like it was too dark. I am not doing any special coloring, none whatsoever. This is a flat color, single color on everything. There's no ink blending. There's no trying to get shadows and dimension, none of that. I wanted to keep this very simple and very quick. I was kind of under a time crunch, waiting for the little one to wake up from her nap, which apparently didn't take because she's awfully cranky. But I'm just going to color these in, like I said, flat color, and I will have the colors that I actually used listed. I showed you a bunch of colors, and like I said, I didn't end up using some of them. So what I'm going to do is after I'm done coloring all of these in, I'm going to use my Brother Scan and Cut to cut them out. This die set, or this stamp set, does come with coordinating dies, but I did not want to have to run through my die cut machine a bajillion and a half times. Plus, it would leave this white border, which is not a bad thing. But I didn't really want the white border on this today. And so using my Brother Scan and Cut to cut all of these out was a lot faster. So you see all of the ones I have, and you can now see where I placed that sentiment. And I thought that these floral swags would be really pretty on those acetate picks right underneath the number. I'm going to really speed up this video because this is the fun part. This is where you get to be creative. This is where you get to kind of see how things fit. This is where you get to kind of play. And so I figured y'all wouldn't want to necessarily see all of that, so I sped this up a lot. Every now and then I try to kind of tilt that up to where you guys can kind of see. I wasn't super successful at that, but I did try. So a lot of the first layer, or the layer closest to you on that grassy border, I adhered all of that flat for the most part. And what I mean by flat is I guess I didn't add any of those acetate picks. I adhered it directly to that little grassy border. When it came time to kind of continue to move backward, I did use a few of the acetate picks and just, again, trying to give more motion, more elevation to these layers so that it doesn't look... So when you're looking straight at this, when it's popped up, you can see everything. You don't have to tilt things or get above it or kind of cock it off to the side in order to see all of the things that are there. You can look at it straight on and see everything that's there. And using those acetate little strips is very helpful just to accomplish that. Some things I glued on with the 1/8 inch score tape, other things I glued on with liquid glue. It does not take a lot of glue. These pieces are small, so it doesn't take a lot of glue. Literally just like almost the size of a pinpoint is what I used on some of these pieces, just to get them to stay. You want to make sure that you don't have any glue oozing out, because if you do, that can inhibit it from opening. So here it is all done. This doesn't really leave a whole lot of space to write a message. So I took some of the leftover dies and some pink cardstock that matched the plaid, and I just made essentially a 5x7 little note card for you to write kind of a personal message to this person, because there really isn't a good place to do that, particularly if you want to write something that has any substance. You could put it on the back right there, but that's really not a lot of room. Plus it's going to be kind of bumpy because now you've got all of the things. So I'm going to show you how I get this in the card. This is a 5x7 card. If you don't put a lot of height, you can fit this into a regular A2 size envelope, but I knew I wanted to have a little bit more height and a little bit more interest, and so I chose to put it in a 5x7. Both the pink cardstock and the envelope came from Paper Studio. So you pull that out, it barely fits. It barely fits. That 0 is like right on the fold of that envelope. So that's how it pops up. That's how it looks when it's all done. You have like 4 layers of dimension there. It looks really lovely, and it was a lot of fun to create. So I hope you felt inspired, and I hope we will get to see you next time. Until then, have a great day. Bye.